up for Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network. It's your final word on sports all across the state. Here's your host, Phil Kornblue.
Hey, he stopped by my house. We loaded up my car. I figured since I've come here a couple times, I'd be the one to drive down here. But it was fun. It was fun to come up here with my brother and get excited for number 11.
Ryan Khalil, who is headed to Panthers training camp. They have reported up in the Sparkle City at the Berg, at Spartanburg. It's time for some football. Are you getting ready? It's time. Let's go hit somebody.
I've been ready, Teddy.
I'm afraid I'd get CTE. We need to go hit somebody. Come on, let's go hit somebody.
Well, you know, the one thing I hate this time of year is I hate that, you know, Arthur Blank had to build that palace for practice for the Falcons, because I used to drive to Spartanburg and see the Panthers in the morning, then just drive up to Furman and see the Falcons in the afternoon. But you can't do that now. You got to go all the way to Flowery Branch.
I will admit that I have never, that's N-E-V-A-H, never been to an NFL training camp, and what's more, never will go to an NFL.
You're missing out. It's fun.
Oh, it's fun. Who wants to go watch a bunch of old men sweat?
You get to see the fights. I mean, you get to see the big hits. You get to see people make a name for themselves.
I want to watch the games. I don't give a rip about training camp.
I forgot who it was, Teddy, but I was at Wofford one morning, and I thought something that heard like a rifle shot go off. I said, "What was that?" And then after I heard it, I heard a guy scream, a non-contact injury where he broke his hip. Unbelievable.
Well, hopefully he had good health insurance.
Yeah, I think he did.
800-956-7266. It's almost time for some football. The Panthers did report. Who else reported today? Anybody? We should know that.
Yeah, about half the NFL teams.
Yeah, teams are starting to report for training camp. The New York Jets are reporting. The Jets are so young, they think they're in contention for the Final Four in college football. The team did release a couple players. The Panthers, they released. I know we got a lot of Panthers fans around here. Released wide receiver Charles Johnson and defensive end Ryan Delaire. I don't know how to pronounce his name. D-E-L-A-I-R-E. Delaire.
Well, maybe that's why they cut him. They couldn't pronounce his name.
Well, they cut him because, according to our old buddy Joe Person, he failed his physical. Did sign center Greg Van Roten, who will improve their GPA because he's a Ivy Leaguer. He was with the Toronto Argonauts last season.
Okay.
Has also played with Green Bay, Seattle. He was with Jacksonville during the offseason, but got picked up by the Carolina Panthers. So we're ready for training camp. We're only let me see if I can add it up. 39 days away until opening day. 39 days until opening day. 6 until the first USC practice. 8 until the first Clemson practice. We've got another time set. I know a lot of you folks out there like to plan in advance.
Yes.
So if you're planning to come see the Gamecocks home opener on September the 16th, I believe it is. That time has been set, and it will be under the lights. That's against Kentucky.
I think it's a 7:30 kick on SEC Network.
SEC, yep. Nobody else wanted it. SEC Network on September 16th. So the first 3 games now, the times have been set with the a game in Charlotte against North Carolina State, 3 o'clock on ESPN. The next week, they head to the other Columbia, Missouri, 7 o'clock game on ESPN2. And then Kentucky, I think it's ESPN2. I don't think that's totally finalized yet. And then Kentucky, 7:30 on September the 16th at Billy Bryce, and that is on the SEC Network. By the way, it's my 49th year, I believe, covering South Carolina football.
Wow, but who's counting?
I expect a cake next year. I really do. I expect a cake. Ray Tanner, if you're listening and not listening to that country music and those dead musicians, I expect a cake next year.
Well, now the cake with 49 on it. Shoot, why wait?
Yeah, because I might not make it. If I have to climb them downstairs anymore, I might not make it to 50. That's a good point. Of course, the Wildcats of Kentucky has won 3 straight, or they have won 3 straight. Let me get my syntax correct, against South Carolina. But previous to that, the Gamecocks had won 13 of 14. It's Kentucky. Come on. Come on. All right, got lots to talk about today. We want to take some of your phone calls, work that in, 800-956-7266. I know a lot of times we get so busy that we don't have time for you, but we're going to make some time for you. We will hear from Ryan Khalil at the bottom of the hour and his journey to training camp. We got the recruiting report. You know, it would not be a Phil Kornblut-led sports talk show without talking about teenage boys. The NCAA making some changes on an experimental basis to baseball. I do want to mention that. Jamie Caldwell, or Chadwell, excuse me, is sitting in, or in this case, I guess standing in, for Joe Amoglia at the Sun Belt meeting. So we'll have a couple of minutes of his comments in the second hour. Of course, Kerry Tharp will join us in the second hour as well. We got to teach Jared how to spell Kerry Tharp's last name.
Joe's at the New York Stock Exchange or something. He couldn't.
Yeah, he probably was. He probably was. He says he's not as rich as everybody thinks he is, but he is pretty rich.
Well, what was that Ted Turner said? Everybody thinks I'm rich because I got a lot of money. No, it's because I got a lot of credit and I can borrow a lot of money.
Yeah, well, yep. Yeah, back before my divorce, I'd walk into the bank and the president of the bank would come to greet me. Now I walk in the bank and they send a security guard over there. We've got some of the basketball classics, the Charleston Classic and the Puerto Rico tip-off. Say that fast 3 times in a row. Those schedules have been set as well. I think the CBS Sports John Rothstein reporting on the Charleston Classic. I don't think that's official yet, but the Puerto Rico tip-off has got their game time set, so we will get to that as well. That first day, I am not one. Mm-hmm. Now, I know I make my living on sports. I've made my living on sports as poorly as that living might be for a long, long time. But I'm really not one to sit in front of the TV all day on a Saturday watching college football. I'm not one to sit in front of the TV all day on a Sunday watching the NFL. I can't tell you the last time I sat down and watched a game from start to finish that did not include either South Carolina, Clemson, or the New York Dog-Ass Jets. I've watched one of those 3. Now I'll watch parts of
I know why you wouldn't sit down and watch the Jets.
Oh, God, they're bad. I watched parts of games, but this coming September the 2nd, I think I might be in front of my couch with a cooler of Mountain Dew, several honey buns, maybe a couple of ham sandwiches, and I don't know if I'm going to move because we get Kent State Clemson at noon on ESPN.
They want to see how hard they can sweat at noon.
Oh, they'll sweat.
Yeah.
We'll see if they play 90 players. I'm predicting at least 90 players.
Yes.
At 3 o'clock, of course, South Carolina and NC State on ESPN. Mm-hmm. And then at 8 o'clock, Alabama and Florida State. I mean, that's a pretty good opening day. I am really looking forward to that. I don't know if many people have sat down and looked at the first day of college football. But there's some pretty good games down there just involving the SEC teams and the ACC teams. I mentioned South Carolina, NC State. I mentioned Alabama, Florida State, Florida, and Michigan in Arlington, Texas. Michigan's a 4-point favorite.
Yeah. The interesting thing is also, if you're not interested in college football, people tune in Alabama, Florida State just to see that new stadium that Atlanta's built there.
They're having trouble with the roof. The roof's going to stay closed for a while because I can't get it open.
Yeah. They had problems getting it closed. That's why they delayed tearing down the Georgia Dome.
Yeah.
They said, wait, before we get this roof closed, let's keep this dome here before you tear it down.
I guess if you're going to have problems, I'd rather have problems getting it open than getting it closed.
Yes.
Yeah. Also, LSU and BYU. Now, I don't know if BYU can stand up if they're physical enough, but, that's a good opening game. And then Texas A&M at UCLA on a Sunday, Tennessee and Georgia Tech on that Monday, Virginia Tech and West Virginia, a Sunday night game. It is, and this I think is part of the 4-team playoff. Teams are not afraid to play each other.
That's right.
It's a great opening day. And it's a great show because I, Teddy Hefner, am here along with Tom Hayes, Jared Rogers. Don't go anywhere. We shall return. All right, I think we could probably record and sell some of this conversation during the breaks. All right, want to join us, 800-956-7266. North Carolina will finally have their day of reckoning after 17 years. I think the NCAA actually bought a house in Chapel Hill because it was just cheaper because they've been there. How long have they been there? 3, 4, 5 years.
It's been been a good while.
They've been there for a while, but North Carolina will have a hearing August the 16th through the 17th in Nashville before, I guess, the infractions committee. Tom, you think you think they may balk at that because no, that's SEC country? They
might. Yeah, I mean, they were arguing. Who's the commissioner of the SEC now?
John Swofford.
No, commissioner of the SEC.
The SEC, Greg Sankey.
Greg Sankey. Yeah, because I think North Carolina initially balked because Sankey's on.
Yes, they complained about that.
And they said, well, wait a minute, he's our competitor. SEC. Wait a minute, but this is the NCAA body, you know. But, you know, the interesting thing, Teddy, is it would be interesting to see because North Carolina has been putting them off, and we know why. They saw the chance to get at least 1 or 2 more national championships in basketball. They got one, and so they've been holding them off. So it'd be interesting to see if the NCAA – this is also a day of reckoning for the NCAA. Because if you're talking about academics, and North Carolina was on probation by the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, I mean, what else do you need? And if they get slapped on the wrist, that'll tell other schools, well, cheating's on, because if they got slapped on the wrist, you know, or we may see the sacred cow syndrome again. But
you ask 100 fans. Would you go on probation for a national championship? Yes. And 98 of them will say, yes, sirree. And that gum right.
No, if they take it away from you, you go to see that trophy and it's not there.
All right, real quickly, let me mention this. I mentioned at the top, the NCAA has expanded some replay rules, and this is on an experimental basis next season. Baseball video review. The Rules Committee last week supported a request from the Southeastern Conference to allow experimental rules for a coach's challenge system and wireless communication from the dugout to the catcher during in-conference competitions only. Has to be approved by NCAA Plan Rules Oversight Panel. The experimental rules would be in place for the 2018 SEC regular season and conference tournament games. Would not be allowed in any non-conference games. They're going to expand the number of plays that can be reviewed, and that will include force tag play calls, a number of base running calls, like whether or not a runner passed a preceding runner, whether a base runner scored ahead of the third out, and whether a base runner touched the base or not. That's after an appropriate appeal, of course. Hit by pitch calls, tag up plays, placement of runners, and interference by runners when breaking up a double play. The challenge system recommended would allow a coach one challenge to have a call overturned by video review. If the challenge is successful, he can keep on challenge.
Yeah,
but if the challenge is not successful, he would lose the ability to issue a challenge for the rest of the ball game. So maybe that brings a little bit of strategy into it. The wireless communication, I'm a little bit of a purist, so I'm not so sure that I like this. Of course, I like the DH, so I guess that means I'm not that much of a purist. But the catcher would wear an earpiece to hear the type of pitch the coaching staff wants thrown. They want to see how that works out, and also they want to test the bats. They're delaying this until 2020. Now, the committee recommended this. This is not experimental, but this would start in the 2020 season to give the schools enough time to purchase the equipment to conduct the bat test. They would test the bats before the first game of a series and before each midweek game to ensure that they are legal. Went up to Alaska in my early 20s to play, and had one of the early metal bats was a Tennessee Thumper, and they weren't as good as they are now. And part of my bat had flattened a little bit. It wasn't really noticeable, but it flattened a little bit. So I'd take the flat part and point it at the pitcher. I hit line drives all over the place. I mean, I hit 450 on that trip up to Alaska. And in about the third game, remember Emmett Ashford, the black umpire?
Yeah.
He was calling. This was after he'd got on the big leagues, and he was calling the plate. And I got as far back as I could. I'm a firm believer to get as far away from that fastball as I can. It gives me a little more time to recognize and to react.
Right.
And the catcher complained I was too far back. So Emmett wanted my bat to mark off the batter's box. I didn't want to give him my bat. because I knew the bat was basically illegal.
Mm-hmm.
But, I didn't have any choice. So I gave it to him and kind of tossed it to him. He gave me a dirty look. He marked it off. And when he gave it back to me, he said, damn thing flat as a pancake. But he didn't throw it out. But anyway, that bat would not have passed this particular test.
It's interesting you said about that replay, Teddy, because you maybe can recall the game. Wasn't it Oregon State and LSU and the SEC had replay where you could call, was that ball fair, foul? And and Oregon State's coach Casey, one of his guys hit what looked like may have been a 3-run homer in the first inning, or at least a ground rule double. And he didn't call for the replay. And I thought it was an astute observation. I don't know who was announcing the game, but they said you got to remember that in the Pac-12, they don't allow replay.
Right.
So reflexively, he didn't ask for it, even though it was available to him. And I think they lost that game, and ultimately they got wiped out of the chance to get to the college.
Definitely should have asked for a replay, but I also think the plate umpire should have asked for
that's true.
Replay. Mm. All right, about 6:26 and a little bit of change. Let's see if John in Hilton Head's got anything to add to this outstanding production. John, good morning. Well, good evening. I'm sorry.
Good afternoon. 3 points I'd like to make about your comments you just made about the NCAA and University of North Carolina.
Okay.
First off, the Southern Association of Colleges and Universities did not put North Carolina on probation. North Carolina, like any other university in that association, comes up every so often for renewal, and the Southern Association held up on extending the renewal or recertifying the renewal until the reports were in from the investigation going on as far as the charges made by the NCAA.
Have they still not recertified?
Yes, they did.
They did recertify.
As soon as those results were in, the University of North Carolina was recertified.
Okay.
Well, as far as academic standing is concerned, they're in good shape.
Yeah, there were news reports that they never refuted that they were on probation.
The second thing I'd like to say to you is that to string out the investigation to win some more national championships, nobody's crazy enough to believe something like that, because that's such a long shot to win something like the NCAA basketball tournament. The reason this thing is going on and on like it has is that the NCAA has issued 3 different charges against North Carolina. They've had a difficult time deciding what's going to stick on the wall and what's not. At one time, they cleared North Carolina except for the women's basketball team as far as the academic thing is concerned. Then they came back later with a third charge to keep the thing active again. And that's what the hearing in August coming up is all about.
Okay. All right, John, appreciate it.
Therein lies why you don't delay, Teddy.
Yeah, well,
because we know that when you delay, they continue to investigate. And when they investigate, they find other things wrong. Well, and by the way, the news reports that they were on probation. I know the guy that called is a North Carolina fan, and good you protecting your university, but they were on probation.
Okay. I know the reason and my morning partner here in Columbia, Rick Sanford, is always complaining about North Carolina, why this thing has taken so long. Remember, the NCAA does not have subpoena power, so they can't force anyone to testify. But they, while they're there on campus, they keep finding new people to talk to, and the new people talk to them, new evidence comes, and that has, as John pointed out, has led to some other charges. And there was more than just a women's basketball team that first time. I can't remember who else, but it was more than just a women's basketball team. All right, be right back.
brother. What was that like today? It was fun. It was
I think the professor got his feathers ruffled there a little bit.
I understand when people are defending the university. I can understand.
Before you get to that, I understand too. But if I was a North Carolina fan, and some of these allegations, if they were true, I would want those people gotten rid of. I mean, this is the reputation of your school. Mm-hmm. And North Carolina has always had a tremendous academic reputation. Impeccable. And all of a sudden, it is kind of taken through the mud by some people trying to get ahead in basketball. Hell, they did fine in basketball before trying to take some shortcuts. So if you're a North Carolina basketball fan, I would want things taken care of. If I'm a North Carolina fan, especially if I hold one of those diplomas from North Carolina, I don't want my diploma discredited. Right. I don't want it anything taken away from it. I would want things taken care of there, and hopefully that's what's going to happen. But anyway, go ahead. You looked it up.
I was just looking it up, and of course, this is today, and this is the college section here. Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, Commission on Colleges, has placed University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill on a year-long probationary period. This was in May 20th, 2015. When the allegations first came out about maybe academic.
Well, maybe John thought you meant they were on now or still on.
Yeah, well, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
But he said I don't think they never were on probation, but they were.
That's not correct. Okay, we're going to hear from Ryan Khalil. Panthers reported to training camp in Spartanburg today. The team did release wide receiver Charles Johnson and defensive end Ryan DeLea. They signed center Greg Van Roten, who would be a backup guy, and I don't know if he'll make it through training camp or not, but they did sign him today. So Ryan Khalil.
It was fun. It was very telling of his music taste, which wasn't great. He got fired of being DJ about 20 minutes into the drive, so I'm surprised I let it go that long.
Can you tell us what was on the play there?
I don't even know. That's how bad it was, Joe. I have no idea. I've never heard of this music before. A lot of weird house stuff. I don't know. Something he picked up in Minnesota, I'm guessing.
Can you kind of give us, not at the risk of getting too much of a play-by-play, but did he come pick you up this morning and y'all drove down?
He stopped by my house. We loaded up my car. I figured since I've come here a couple times, I'd be the one to drive down here. But it was fun. It was fun to come up here with my brother and get excited for number 11.
Ever think that would be a possibility? I mean, obviously in the NFL, you can end up just about anywhere.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I mean, we've always talked about it, but for it to be real, I think is pretty exciting.
Do you all have roommates here, and if so, are you rooming with them?
No, we all have our own rooms, but we're in close proximity, and I've already sort of driven around the campus and let him see where all the different areas are, where we're going to be, just so he gets familiar with that. But yeah, it's exciting. I'm
guessing you have a kind of line where like you want to introduce him around, but you don't want to be hovering him. Is that accurate? Or?
Yeah, honestly, my relationship with him since he's been down here, it hasn't been any different than a new teammate that would have come into town and shown him around. As far as when we get to the facilities and things like that, but no, I mean, obviously we're brothers, so we're going to spend time together. But for the most part, I think we're teammates first here, and that's the exciting part.
All right, my apologies. I did a very poor job of introducing that segment, but the Khalil brothers, Ryan and Matt, are both with the Panthers as of now, and they drove down together to training camp. So,
and one used to be with the Vikings, right?
Yeah,
Minnesota.
I believe Matt was with the Vikings, or wait a minute, hang on. Yeah, Matt was with the Vikings. I looked that up real quickly, and they drove down together. All right, so training camps are getting underway. I think our Jared, our producer, said the Texans also reporting today. In case you're just joining us, USC's home opener set for 7:30. That's September the 16th against Kentucky. It will be on the SEC network. Kentucky has won 3 straight in the rivalry, but USC 13 of the previous 14. So the first 3 set now, times 3 o'clock against NC State up in Charlotte on September the 2nd, 7 o'clock at Missouri the next week, and then the third week, Kentucky at 7:30. So that's your first 3 ball games.
Well, Teddy, you mentioned that Houston is going to training camp. What are the odds of the Houston Texans having 2 of the most dominant college football players in the history of the state, Jadeveon Clowney, defensive end, and then you have the quarterback from Clemson, Deshaun Watson, that quarterback, and they're on a team that's owned by a guy that graduated from a South Carolina university. What are the odds of that?
I got a feeling there's going to be a lot of Texan fans among both South Carolina and Clemson fans here in the state. I mentioned this earlier, and Pro, you're a big basketball fan. John Rothstein of CBS Sports reporting that the 2017 Charleston Classic will feature Clemson against Ohio, Dayton against Hofstra, Temple against Old Dominion, and Auburn against Indiana State. The Puerto Rico tip-off announced their pairings. This is in November. I'm not sure when the Charleston Classic is. Do you know off the top of your head? It's around the same time.
November,
yeah, it's around the same time. Gamecocks will play Illinois State in the first round, Iowa State and App State, Tulsa and Western Michigan, and Texas El Paso and Boise State. So a couple of basketball notes there for you. I want to get into this CTE study. Another study, and I would love to get some comments from you, some of you folks out there, especially parents. If you're the parents of, 10, 12-year-old boy that's kind of athletic and would like to play some football, do you have any second thoughts about football? Now, this study was by neuropathologist Dr. Ann Mackey, did a study of 202 brains. Nice way to make a living, isn't it?
Okay.
111 of them were from former NFL players, and all but one was diagnosed with CTE. Now, keep in mind, for these brains to have been donated for the study, I would guess that they were some symptoms that was noticed when the folks were alive.
Right.
So I'm not going to say that if you took every player that ever played in the NFL, that the percentages would be the same. But still, this is kind of interesting. The age range was 23 to 89. There were 44 linemen, 20 running backs, 17 defensive backs, 13 linebackers, 7 quarterbacks, 5 receivers, 2 tight ends, a punter, and a kicker. How the heck does a punter and a kicker get CTE? No answer. I don't know either.
I don't know either. I'm sitting there. I'm just wondering how.
I don't know. That's a good question. Of the 202 brains in the study among players from all levels of football, 87% were revealed to have CTE. 87%. And this included NFL players, college players, and high school players. I thought they broke it down in here by each sport, but I don't see that. But their studies did show that the higher up you progressed. I mean, there were high school students or high school football players who showed a percentage that showed CTE, but not as much as college and not as much as the NFL. So the more you played, obviously, the more chance you had of being diagnosed with CTE. Now, you and I are at the age of where, of course, I have a son that is old enough that he could be playing football, but he never had any desire to play football. And I can remember we were walking through a grocery store one day before I had my right knee replacement, and I was really struggling. And he looked at me and said, "Daddy, aren't you glad I don't play football?" And I had to think about that. But then, we got, what was that? 100 of 202 brains. The percentage very high of players with CTE. But I can sit here and reel off on my hands or from my memory former football players who are Hootie Johnson comes to mind, Tommy Suggs, Todd Ellis, guys who are Carl Hill, very, very successful folks who also played football. So it's really, you really wonder, do you let your son play or not? I think we should call Philip at his home and let him do the recruiting report. What do you think? Or on the ship, his cruise ship, where the heck he is. Let Philip have the recruiting report.
Well, you know, the interesting thing is, Teddy, I remember that time Coin was on with us from Omaha, and he didn't get the cue to come back on. And they asked him, you know, he's in the press box and the game's going on.
Right.
He said, well, Coin, you didn't hear the cue. I didn't hear the cue. I was making some recruiting calls. I said, what? I said, at the College World Series while the games are going on? And he's still calling.
The man makes recruiting calls all night. All right, it is time for our award-winning, #1 in the market, the recruiting report.
It's a tight race between USC and Georgia wide receiver Josh Vann of Tucker, Georgia. He's gone back and forth as each of his leader between the two over the last summer months. Now coming off of a visit from USC last weekend, Vann said if he had to commit today, it would be USC. But of course, he doesn't have to commit today. I feel like I'm leaning, probably not that much, but I think I'm leaning South Carolina, Vann said. There's more of a 50-50 split between the two schools, but I feel like I'm leaning more that way right now. I feel more at home down there. That visit, it was amazing. They got to top that even more. It's even more of a deep feeling coming back from there. Vann continues to mull over his decision, and he's not had a set a date for one. It could come before this season in August, or he might wait a game or two into the season. As for Saturday's Spurs Up cookout at USC, Vann said it was less about football and more about bonding with the coaches and players. When I went down there, most of the time I probably worked out and took a tour. He said this time it was just getting to know everybody, the coaches and other recruits. The message from the coaches was just, you need to be a Gamecock. Come on now. But it was just more of a bonding day. We got to do activities, and then we sat around and talked. Vann said he was joined on the visit by his parents and his brother. And he said, my mom kept on saying she felt like it was on vacation. So I guess that's a good sign. Vann said that the USC visit is the last one before he makes his commitment. He recently visited Georgia and said the Bulldogs are working him as hard as USC is, contacting him daily. It wasn't like that at first, he said. It's been every day. They're keeping in touch with me, and I'm keeping in touch with them, so everything's cool. Defensive back J.C. Horn of Alpharetta, Georgia, visited Alabama and Tennessee last weekend. He's trying to make the decision between those two and USC. He's already passed his original decision deadline of July 15th because he just can't make up his mind, and he hasn't set a new deadline, so everyone's just waiting there. But he said he will visit USC one more time before making the decision, and when that visit will take place has not yet been determined. Horn went to Alabama Friday and then was at Tennessee on Saturday and Sunday, and he said that both visits went well. I liked both of them. It was cool, he said. At Alabama, it was just a little cookout, and after that, we went to the locker room, tried on the uniform, and that was pretty much it. I stayed overnight at Tennessee. I talked to all the coaches and just hung out. Horn also talks regularly with the Gamecocks coach, Will Muschamp, and whose messages go to him. He said he's been consistent throughout. Just come to South Carolina and be a part of the upcoming success of the Gamecocks, he said. They are on their way up, and he wants me to be a part of that. I don't really care about the past history of any of the teams. I'm just trying to go somewhere where I feel comfortable with the coaches. Will all three of those programs, I can't go wrong. All of them have had success in the past, so I'm not worried about what happened in the past. I feel like I can play at any school early, personally, so now it's just me seeing where I get the best feel. Horn said there is no leader at this point among the three schools. Offensive lineman Javon Gwynn of Charlotte is down to USC, NC State, and Duke. He visited USC Saturday, and he's got no commitment date yet. Defensive lineman Rick Sandridge of Concord, North Carolina, said USC will make his top 7 when he drops it soon. He visited Friday and Saturday. A decision is not coming soon, as he plans to take official visits to other schools in the fall. Also on his current short list are Ohio State, Michigan, North Carolina, NC State, Virginia Tech, LSU, Florida State, Florida, Georgia, and Miami. Conway defensive end Raekwon O'Neal will visit Rutgers Thursday and Maryland Saturday. He was at USC last weekend and asked what he did on the visit with the Gamecocks. O'Neal said that information was none other than classified. He announced it August 16th. Defensive end Adam Anderson of Rome, Georgia, visited Clemson on Monday. He is a former LSU commitment. He's also taken recent visits to Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama. Florida is one of the other schools in his top 5. Defensive back Stanley Garner III of Fort Lauderdale announced a final 6 of Clemson, Tennessee, Michigan, Alabama, Louisville, and Kentucky. Clemson is in the final 6 with 2019 defensive lineman Jacob Lacey of Bowling Green, Kentucky. He plans a decision this summer. The other 5 programs are Louisville, Michigan, Michigan State, Notre Dame, and Tennessee. And Clemson target wide receiver Brennan Eagles of Houston committed to Texas. Basketball news, there's only one. Clemson offered 6'10" Riley Batten of Oak Park, California. The 2019 recruit 6'10" Oscar Tishebwe of Mountain Mission, Virginia, and 2020 point guard Sharif Cooper of Powder Springs, Georgia. That's it for the recruiting report. All hot off the press from Phil Kornblut.
Well, it's interesting. They're going to have some wars in recruiting. Georgia and South Carolina, of course, Kirby Smart and Will Muschamp friends. Will Muschamp is the Van kid, the wide receiver, Josh Van. Muschamp would say Van is mine because we had Riley Ridley committed last year. You came into town and sneaked and took him away from us. Remember they had a commitment from Riley Ridley.
I remember like it was yesterday.
Yeah, and then Georgia came in, he swooped him up, and so Will Muschamp said, "It's my turn."
Okay. One note on Lucky Whitehead, who was anything but. Well, he was kind of lucky. He was not arrested. But, the weird thing about this is that when he was when this individual was picked up for shoplifting, he did not have a ID. And Prince William County, that's Virginia, right?
Mm-hmm.
The guy gave his name, his address, and his social security number. He had them all. But old Lucky wasn't anywhere near. But the Cowboys cut him anyway. The paperwork had not gone through, so there were some thoughts that maybe they would reconsider. But the bad news for Lucky, he's still cut. Jason Garrett, meeting with the media today, said that the Cowboys made a decision to do what was best interest of the Cowboys and that they are moving forward. He kind of insinuated that there was some other stuff involved instead of just the
it just seems like they were just waiting for a reason to cut him. Just sit there and say, "Yeah, we got to call you guys over here jaywalking. Cut him."
My buddy Kurt Burnett, who's the head coach at Airport, was in the Jets camp. He said he stayed probably a week longer than he should have because he ran a pass route, and coaching staff got on him about running the wrong route. And Ken O'Brien said, "No, wait a minute. Whoa, wait a minute." He said, "Look," and he corrected him. Mm-hmm. And Kurt had actually ran the correct route, so he said he probably stayed around a week longer, and then they just kind of forgot he was there. But Kurt said he knew his time was coming, so he took the playbook and flipped across to a Kinko's. and he Xeroxed the entire playbook, the Jets playbook, so that he knew that he wanted to get into coaching, and he knew his days were numbered with the National Football League. But so he Xeroxed the
might as well
playbook.
Take some notes while I'm here.
Yeah, you're right. And of course, we're just a couple of days away from high school football getting started. We talked with David Shelton of the High School Sports Report yesterday. They get started Friday with preseason practice. Boy, that's awful early to get started. All right, we've got another hour for you. We want some of your phone calls. We'll hear from Jamie Chadwell, also Kerry Tharp joining us today as well. Teddy Hefner, Tom Hayes with you, and we got all kind of good things to talk about. And I really want to talk about this CTE thing. Some of you parents out there are grandparents, in your case of mine, Tom. Would you allow or would you not allow your son to play football, high school football, college football, whatever? All right, we'll be back. Top of the hour.
stop now. More sports talk is on its way. Listen to the final word in sports all across the state with your host, Phil Kornbluth.
All right, I'm not Phil. I'm a lot thinner, a lot better looking. Teddy Hafner with you, joined by Tom Hayes, Jared Rogers behind the glass, doing all the fancy stuff, pushing the right buttons. A little baseball for you. Of course, the Braves at Arizona tonight, 9:40. Atlanta's lost 3 in a row. Only afternoon game. Cubs beat the White Sox 7-2. Little beanball battle broke out in the middle of that one. Wilson Contreras had a home run and knocked in 4 runs in that one. Steven Strasburg, a nerve impingement in his right arm. I think it said elbow, not positive, but his right arm. And not sure when he will make another start. But Strasburg is looking at maybe missing a couple of starts. We went over this CTE study a little bit earlier. I want to mention it again. A neuropathologist, Dr. Ann Mackey, or it could be McKee, M-C-K-E-E, did a study of 202 brains, 111 of them former NFL players. Tom asked me if we knew who they were. We do know that one of the brains studied was that of quarterback Ken Stabler. The others have not been mentioned. Many, some of the family did not want them to be publicly identified. Of the 111 NFL players who were, I don't want to say diagnosed. What do you call it? Examined?
Mm-hmm. I guess you could.
Okay. Anyway, who had their brains cut open?
Yeah, I thought you had to be alive to be diagnosed.
Yeah, that's why I say I can't say diagnosed.
Yeah,
but anyway,
right.
Of course, that's what the this story I'm using uses. But diagnosis doesn't do you very much good when you're gone.
Source to find another name.
Yeah, but anyway, of the 111, only one NFL player was not diagnosed with CTE. They had one punter and one kicker had some CTE problems, and also they did college and high school players as well, and players even those who just played a little bit of high school football were diagnosed, some with mild CTE as well. College and professional players showed more severe effects, but even those with mild cases exhibited cognitive, mood, and behavioral symptoms. You know, I would be a prime candidate for that, even though I wasn't all that good. Somebody asked me once if I'd played any football, and I said, well, I thought I did until I saw some old game films. But I was a guy who I was taught to use my helmet. And I was a running back, and I wasn't I was fast for my day, but that was a long time ago. But I was not a guy that was I was more of a north-south guy. But when a guy came up to make a tackle, my mode of transportation, I would stick my helmet right in his sternum, and then I would spin one way or another. And it's amazing how difficult it is to make a tackle when you got somebody's helmet in your sternum, and then they're spinning. So I use my head all the time. And it was kind of, you remember the helmets that had all the paint on?
Oh, yeah.
That was a badge of honor. I mean, I remember one of the managers, hey, you want me to clean your helmet? Hell no, you stay away from that helmet, because you wanted all the other helmet colors on your helmet. Yeah,
because that was before the NFL, and back then was the AFL. They didn't have a dress code. Now all the helmets got to be shined up and everything.
Right.
But you remember Ernie Ladd, the big defensive tackle everybody had that nice shiny red helmets, and then he puts his helmet on, his dents, scratches,
right,
all on it, because he wanted to say, I hit you when I stand up here.
Right. Well, when I looked at football is the ultimate team sport, and there are lessons that I learned on the football field that I don't think I could have learned anywhere else. Now, you could extrapolate that to band, debate, other extracurricular activities that maybe those folks learn similar type lessons. Now, in the high school atmosphere, if football or baseball or basketball or wrestling or track, if it's not part of the educational process, it's got no business being there. So I do think that these sports are crucial, quite frankly, for the education and the development of our youth. But was it David Shelton the other day that said Wando had like 4,000 students and only 80 came out? Of course, you guess half and half. 80 came out for football. Yeah, when I was younger in the 60s, when Gaffney was such a power, if you were a male, you went out for football. Now, if you got cut, that was fine. But if you didn't go out for football, you were ostracized. I mean, you went out for football at Gaffney. Now, maybe you didn't make it, and that's okay. But at least you went out there. So I think that they, especially at the high school level and in the college level, they're trying very hard to make the game safer. And that's never going to be totally safe.
No.
I mean, it's a contact sport. It's not a contact sport. It's a collision sport. Yeah. And I was a running back. I ran 4.740, which in my day was pretty good, and I weighed 177 pounds. Heck, running backs today are 240, and they run in 4.5s. Now, the force of the collisions with the size of the players today
and the speed, they're bigger and faster.
Yeah, it's just it's incredible.
Yeah,
it really is. But if they can get the head hits out of the sport, they can, and they're trying to do that. I know a lot of people hate this targeting rule, but I think it's totally necessary.
Yes.
Maybe it needs to be tweaked a little bit more, maybe enforced a little bit more. But I think it's totally necessary in this day and age. You just can't have headhunters anymore like the old days.
I think the problem, though, Teddy, is we've seen players, square up their shoulders to hit a guy, and just as soon as he's about to hit the running back puts his head down,
right,
and then they go helmet to helmet. But it's hard to judge that in real time if you're an official. You almost have to call it targeting because that's the way you see it in real time. And,
well, that's fine. That's why you have the replay. You got to have replay officials with enough guts to make calls. And I think that's been a problem, especially in college football, with the replay system, especially early in the replay system, because it was almost like the replay officials didn't want to overturn their buddies down on the field. I can tell you, as a longtime baseball umpire, I wanted to get it right. You weren't going to embarrass me by changing the call. You want to get it right. I do think that they need to look at some of these targeting calls a little bit closer. Some of them are not targeting, and then some of them are missed. I think now, doesn't the replay official have the he's got the power to, even if targeting is not called on the field, he can call down. He can bring it down. But we got to get, and you're right. There's going to be helmet to helmet, incidental sometimes. Right. And I think intent needs to be considered, but you can't read intent. If it's helmet to helmet, you ought to throw the flag. Now you let the replay guy maybe look at it and says, that wasn't the defender's fault, etc., etc. I don't think I could play today. I'd have to change because I blocked defensive ends that were 30 pounds heavier than I was by cutting them. Yeah, you can't cut people anymore, and you can't use your helmet.
You run that option. You can cut block a little bit at the line
inside
of scrimmage.
Inside
the tackle,
inside the scrimmage box. You're absolutely right. But I'm just kind of curious. Some of you listeners out there, are you concerned about the safety of football? Heck, a lot of listeners out there probably say, heck, if they get hurt, drag them off, bring another one in there. I want to be entertained. Kind of like the gladiators over there in Rome.
Are you not entertained?
Entertain me. Go hit somebody.
Well, the interesting thing is one of the residual problems with the targeting that I think people really didn't think about, Teddy, and they do it more at the National Football League level, is I could swear I'm seeing more running backs with knee and leg injuries because guys saying, okay, if I can't hit him high,
gotta hit him
I'm going to hit him in the knee and in the thigh area. And then you have injuries with a lot of knees and ankles and high ankle sprains.
Well, it's never going to be totally safe, but you will always have people willing to take that risk and willing to play, whether it be high school, college, or the NFL. I'll be right back. I got Jamie Chadwell coming up in just a second. Delvin's been hanging on for a while. I think he wanted to talk about Unlucky Whitehead. Delvin, good evening. Thanks for your patience.
No problem, guys. About this whole Unlucky Whitehead situation, it makes me trust. I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. It makes me not trust the Cowboys because they said they investigated this whole situation and that they vetted this whole thing. Turns out they didn't investigate this whole situation, which got me thinking: are they really investigate Ezekiel Elliott, or they just twiddle their thumbs, wait to see what the NFL gonna do?
I don't know. This was bizarre. I don't know how this individual would know Whitey Luckhead's social security number, but he evidently did, and that led to the misidentification in the first place. But once again, Jason Garrett meeting with the media today said that the Cowboys made the decision to do what was best for the Cowboys, the best interest of the Cowboys, and that they were moving forward. And he was pressed a couple of times about it. And the report I read kind of insinuated that that they felt they had more, that there was more than just this particular incident, and maybe just felt like he couldn't play.
And of course, you still have to ask, how did the guy have his Social Security number?
Yeah, I tell you what, if I'm lucky, I want to know that, or in this case, unlucky. All right, Delvin, appreciate your patience. All right, the Sun Belt, excuse me, the Sun Belt media days. What did Jared? They met yesterday.
They met yesterday.
Okay, and of course, Joe Moglia is still sidelined. So Jamie Chadwell, who I guess is kind of the coach in waiting now at Coastal, met with the media yesterday. Jared, you want to introduce that?
Oh yeah, I got you. So they met yesterday, and Jamie Chadwell just took a few minutes to talk about expectations for Coastal Carolina coming into a new conference. They were with the Southern, the SoCon last year. They were 10-2 in their last season, which is not bad, but they have moved up, and they were picked 12th
in the Big South.
In the big,
they were in the Big South.
They were in the Big South, and they got picked 12th this year for the Sun Belt decisions. The Sun Belt Conference. So this is a bit on his expectations.
We are excited about this first year in the Sun Belt Conference. Our mission, our football program, to field a team that all of Coastal can be proud of, and I think that's what you'll see this year as we take on this the conference here that's coming off the highest or the best year they've ever had. You'll see a team that plays extremely hard, plays with passion, plays with a purpose. We're looking forward to competing and seeing where we stand. We know it's going to be a hard transition, but we're coming off where we feel like we've got a great foundation built with our program and what we stand for, and looking forward to the competition and being a great member of the Sun Belt Conference. So I'll answer your questions from there. Go ahead. Can you ask?
Coach, your guys have gone, I think, 43-10 over the last 4 years, and you're picked 12th. First time out. Is that sort of is that a little bit of a wake-up call, or is it sort of like you can use that as motivation?
Well, I think you can use it as motivation, but we knew, obviously being a new member, that and not a lot of people knowing about us and going off of our FCS record, that we were going to probably be picked there. So it's I'm sure we will use it in some ways that, hey, these people are doubting you. Anytime you can play with a chip on your shoulder, it helps you. But it's something that was expected. But you mentioned our record. Our head coach is 51-15 in 5 years. So our expectations are to win, and that's what we expect to do. And no matter if we're making this jump or not, you'll see a team play that way.
We're coming back.
And I think you'll be surprised by the product that we put on the field.
Hi, Jamie Chadwell, Sun Belt. If you're not familiar with the Sun Belt, or just not comes to mind, App State and Troy are your favorites there in the Sun Belt this year. You also have Arkansas State, South Alabama, Idaho, Louisiana, Georgia Southern, Louisiana Monroe, Georgia State, New Mexico State, and Texas State. 12 teams in the Sun Belt, and I think probably App State or Troy is going to be picked by either to win. One of those two predicted to win that conference.
The Idaho Vandals. I think
what
that's
a great nickname.
Mike Schlereth used to play, who, by the way, left ESPN. I think he's going to be at Fox this year. Mike Schlereth.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but I enjoyed his commentary. He was good.
You know who else was from Idaho? Harmon Killebrew. Harmon Killebrew was from Idaho. Was a really good baseball player.
The old Alaska governor was from Idaho too. She went to school
Sarah?
at the university. Yeah,
Sarah Palin?
Yeah. Majored in broadcast.
Yeah, one of our future presidents,
At
right?
University of Idaho.
Sarah. Wouldn't you love to go hunting with Sarah Palin? I'm not a hunter, but
just as long as I'm standing behind
her.
Yeah.
I think she probably hits what she aims at.
She
which I mean, I'd still want to stand behind her.
That's why I stand behind.
All right, Kerry Tharp will join us in a bit. We'll talk a little bit of NASCAR with Kerry. Dale Earnhardt Jr. going to NBC. Now, we'll talk with Kerry about this, but did I understand this correctly? They're going to use him for more than just NASCAR. They're talking about using him at Olympics and football and all kind of other
because
things.
he's internationally known. There's no doubt about it. And you know, to tell you the truth, Teddy, I forgot what race it was, but he was mic'd up, I think, in the cockpit or whatever. And I think either he knew it or unbeknownst to him, he was so good in the cockpit. NBC probably said, wait a minute, hold it. And then the light came on. Hey, we can get this guy, hire him.
That was kind of his screen test. He didn't even know it, huh?
Exactly.
Okay. Not a bad way to go. Boy, did I just hear thunder?
Yes, you did.
Are we safe in this building?
Where's
the fire
still
escape?
Here.
Okay. All right. Just wondering. We mentioned a little bit earlier some of the opening games, ACC and SEC, but since we just mentioned Coastal Carolina, let's mention a couple of the state games here in Columbia on September the 2nd. Livingstone and Benedict at 5 o'clock in the Capital City Classic over at Johnson Stadium. Newberry's at the Citadel at 6 o'clock. Furman is at Wofford at 6 o'clock. And Coastal will be hosting UMass at 7 o'clock. So that's some of those games on September the 2nd.
I went with a friend, and I hadn't been to a FCS game in a long time. And it was a couple of years ago, went to Wofford, really enjoyed myself. They played the Citadel. And
I bet that game didn't take long.
No, it didn't. It really did not take long. No, it did not. About 2.5 hours, I think.
Presbyterian at Wake Forest on August the 31st gets it started. And South Carolina State is at Southern on September the 3rd, a 2:30 Sunday game. And I believe that's on ESPN.
Yeah, I think that's down in Florida.
In Florida, okay.
Yeah, down in Florida.
You don't know where in Florida, do you?
Boy, I want to say Orlando.
Okay. So South Carolina versus Southern at 2:30.
Yeah, so you always take a team from the MEAC and one from the SWAC, and they play down there the opening season.
Okay, that's the first week's schedule for some of the other statewide teams as well. Man, it's just around the corner. If you have not heard, now the Gamecocks home opener has been set. South Carolina and Kentucky set for 7:30 September the 16th. It will be televised on the SEC network. Kentucky's won 3 straight in that series, but USC won 13 of the previous 14. So the first 3 South Carolina games, the game times have been set. Of course, the Gamecocks opening in Charlotte against North Carolina State at 3 o'clock on ESPN. And then they travel to Missouri on September the 9th, 7 o'clock. I think it's on ESPN too, but it's on one of the ESPN properties. I tell you, that NC State game just looms so big to me, Professor. If they can win that ball game, I think they can certainly beat Missouri on the road, Kentucky at home, and Louisiana Tech at home, and get off to a 4-0 start and get a lot of people in the state all excited. The first 3 games for Clemson has also been set. A noon kickoff on September 2nd against Kent State. September 9th, Auburn will be there for a prime timer, 7 o'clock on ESPN. And then the Louisville game on September the 16th is a 3:30 kickoff. All right, Kerry Tharp with some NASCAR when we come back. Sports Teddy Hefner, Tom Hayes with you on this Tuesday night, I believe it is. We shall return. All right, I got Kerry Tharp with us. Kerry, hang on just a second before we get to Kerry. Let me update you on the State American Legion baseball tournament in Riley Park, where it is raining. Riley Park, of course, in Sumter, where it is raining, just like it is here in downtown Columbia. Emmons handed Rock Hill its first setback of the tournament earlier today, 18-5. And we have a weather delay in the 6th inning with Chapin Newberry and Florence Post 1 tied at 3 to of the outstanding American Legion programs here in the state. They will conclude things tomorrow, I believe, there at Riley Park. All right, my old buddy Kerry Tharp joined us, talk a little bit of NASCAR. Of course, Kerry, president of Darlington Raceway, and a guy that can get me free tickets to the race coming up.
You're not supposed to tell everybody that, Teddy.
Well, I'm telling him for his benefit.
Keep that under your hat, Teddy. I can't let anybody know. Corn Blue will get mad at me.
Yeah. Well, when I say free tickets, he'll give me a press pass, maybe.
Oh yeah,
maybe.
Anytime. Always welcome.
Kerry, of course, at Pocono this week. Before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about Dale Jr. going to NBC, and I understand NBC wants to use him for more than just racing. That's got to be good for your sport to have him out there doing other things.
It really is, Teddy. And when I heard that news the other day, I was very happy. I think it's obviously a great deal for Dale Jr. and certainly helps NASCAR out. Dale Jr. is one of those rare athletes that transcends the sport. And I think Jeff Gordon was another one for us. And certainly Dale Jr. has been that type of athlete for us for almost 2 decades now. And I think it's really cool that he's going to, sounds like do a lot of NASCAR, obviously, but also maybe let him do some other sports. And, he's a huge college and pro football fan, and so I could see him doing a super job, talking about college football, talking about pro football. He's a big Redskins fan. He's shown an affinity for the Gamecocks. So I think that's great news, and I think he'll do a super job.
Well, as the Professor Tom Hayes was saying earlier, he's extremely articulate individual.
Mm-hmm. He's so candid and honest in his opinions and his commentary. He's got a little bit of humor, obviously, Kannapolis humor involved with it, but he is. The times I heard him doing the broadcast for the Xfinity races the last couple of years, I was very impressed with the job that he did, and just thought that he did a very, very good job and very well spoken, and I think the folks at NBC got a good one there.
You mentioned Jeff Gordon. My favorite Jeff Gordon is when they did the test drive that played the prank on the car sales, and that was hilarious. Oh, yeah. That was hilarious. If you've never seen that, you need to go. I guess you can get it on YouTube. Yeah, it is funny. It is really good.
Yeah, he did a super job there when he was, I think, promoting his product, Pepsi, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
and he just had everybody fooled, and nobody knew who it was, and it was hilarious. It sure was.
What can you tell us about Alex Bowman, who has taken over for Dale Jr., very, very young driver, and maybe some NASCAR fans who are just, kind of so-so NASCAR fans, not really deep into the sport, do not know who Alex Bowman is?
Well, I think Alex Bowman is a diamond in the rough, Teddy. I really do. I think, he's one of those guys that I think you put him in the right position, you put him in the right equipment, the right team, I think he's going to flourish. And I'm sure that's what Rick Hendrick saw in him. And, I gotta hand it to Rick Hendrick. I mean, he probably knows more about the sport than most of us have ever forgotten. And so I think Alex will be a real asset over there. He's a talented driver who really just hasn't had an opportunity to perform, and so I think he'll do a good job over there. I think people will warm up to him, and I think it was a bold move, but I think it was a good move by Rick Hendrick.
How does Darlington set up for Dale Jr.? Has he had success there in the past?
Teddy, it's been a love-hate relationship for him. He loves the throwback weekend. He absolutely loves what we do, honoring the past and so forth and the heroes. In fact, one one of the men that we're honoring this year is his dad, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Dale Earnhardt Sr., and he's going to be very front and center for our race weekend this year. But, he's never won a race here at Darlington. I think it's one of the few tracks that he hasn't won at. And, he's very, very hopeful that his last time here is a success. And just hasn't been his liking, but he absolutely loves the throwback weekend, so maybe something good will happen for him this time.
Any changes at Darlington? Anything to the track?
Teddy, we're all systems go. We had a Goodyear tire test here last year. We made a few tweaks to the. We had a couple areas there on the racetrack that we needed to tend to, and those were passed with flying colors by the Goodyear tire test folks that were here. So, I think the fans are going to enjoy the throwback weekend. This year it's 1985 to 89 is the kind of the era that we're focusing in on. We got great pre-race entertainment. Brett Michaels from Poison, the former lead singer of Poison, will be there, and we have the Oak Ridge Boys singing the national anthem. So, we're 41 days out. We're all systems go.
You gonna grow a mullet too?
I don't know if I got enough hair to grow a mullet. I think Teddy could probably beat me on that.
Well, now I've heard of the Oak Ridge Boys. I must admit I've not heard of Poison, but I've heard of the
Poison was a big rock band, kind of a hair band back in the late 80s. Brett Michaels, reality TV star. You've probably seen him with the headband and so forth. And so I think our fans will like that.
Okay. Ticket sales, how they going?
They're going good, Teddy. I mean, right now, actually, we're a little bit above last year's mark, which is always a positive in this day and time. And so, we're all systems go, and certainly there are some good seats available. We're working hard in our military offers, also with the college kids. We've got a big offer down at USC and other campuses around the state for some good college tickets. And so, I say right now, we get some good weather, we're going to have a heck of a crowd.
Darlington's always a fun weekend. I used to really enjoy going down there. Is Bill Kaiser still around anywhere?
Bill, I've invited him to the race this year, Teddy. Believe it or not, I knew Bill a little bit, not very much. He's living over in Georgia, and I hope he's able to come. We'd love for him and his wife to come, but we did invite him here about 6 weeks ago. And, we feel like it's a reunion of sorts, and so we'd certainly love to have Bill back at Darlington.
Bill was the PR guy for many, many years there at Darlington, and just did a great job, and was one of my all-time favorite people, along with you too, KT, because I thought you did a great job.
Well, I appreciate that, Teddy.
At Carolina, slapped me down when I needed to, but for the most part,
Teddy, you were always straight shooter. You gave it like you told it like it was. You were always honest and upfront, and I'll always respect that.
Well, that business has changed a little bit since you first got into it, that sports information business, and since I first got into it many years ago.
It really has, Teddy. I can remember when I first got into business, really about 1980, 1981. I was working at the University of Tennessee, and then went to Oklahoma and then South Carolina, and it has changed a lot. And I'm sure there's some things about it that have changed for the better, but there's maybe some things that aren't so good as they used to be. When I recall, when I first got into business, the SID and the people in the athletics department, they could hang out with the sports writers. And I don't know how many sports writers are really left in the world. And I considered you a sports writer. I considered Ernie a sports writer, Bob Gillespie a sports writer, Bob Cole a sports writer. And I saw this when I was at NASCAR. I just didn't really see a whole lot of sports writers left in the profession. There were still reporters and journalists and so forth, but the sports writer was a guy or gal that could saddle up to you, and you could tell him or her, something that was going on, and trust them and have that confidence of what was going on. And I think as times change and as society changes, I'm not too sure if that relationship exists that much anymore.
I think you're right, KT. Hey, always great to talk to you, and I might take you up on those press passes to the race.
You give me a holler. I'd love to have you all there. Show Cornblue who's in charge.
Okay. All right, Kerry Tharp with some NASCAR. All right, hang in there. We'll be back with some final thoughts. Enjoyed chatting with Kerry Tharp there. I don't know how interesting it would be to some of the listeners out there, but I'd love to get Kerry on and just talk a little bit about the change in the way the sports information director, the media changes, et cetera, over the years. He mentioned getting into sports information in 1980. I started work at the state newspaper in 1971. And of course, back then, the state newspaper was, that's where you got your news from.
Yes.
And that's not the case anymore. The USC Media Relations Department has changed its name, as a matter of fact. It's now the Athletic Communications and Public Relations. Steve Fink, who used to be the sports information director, I don't know if he's got a fancier title or not, was quoted as saying, "We no longer rely solely on the messages carried by external media sources." So basically, schools are now covering themselves.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's, here's the thing, Teddy. It's interesting. They can cover themselves, and that's great for the people, especially those who are fans, because I was talking to a guy in Jacksonville, and it's interesting. The sports talk show in Jacksonville, that's the flagship station of the Jaguars, their ratings in afternoon drive are lower than the other station because some of the people figure they'll get the truth on the other stations that don't have don't have the rights to the football team.
How many fans want the truth? So see, that's always been interesting to me, because I think a lot of fans just want the
problem. Yeah, they want to get fed.
They want everything is great. Well, we were talking earlier about the North Carolina situation. The Tar Heels going before the NCAA. I think it's the infractions committee. Anyway, that's scheduled for August the 16th and 17th. And I was saying, if I'm a North Carolina fan, I would be upset. Not at people covering the scandal, quote unquote scandal. I'd be upset at the people that did it in the first place. So, and I understand being a fan of your school and supporting your school, but don't you want to do it the right way? And don't you, if you're following a team, a school, or whatever, don't you want to know what's going on? You're not going to get that from the school itself if that's all you rely on. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting the way that media has developed.
All the lines are blurred now, Teddy. I mean, there's no such thing as a deadline now. You get a story, you put it on the web, and it goes on all the time. You have to feed this 24-hour monster called Twitter, internet, all the sites. Who's got it first? When? Let me push the send button, and And so
I love the way the media will. I mean, I don't break many stories, but I break some, and I'll break something, and an hour, not an hour, 10 minutes later, another media source will say, "Sources tell us." Well, hell, I know who the source was. And they'll look on Twitter or somewhere else, and they'll see somebody break a story, and then they'll say, "Well, our sources confirmed." They won't tell you that their sources are Twitter. I kind of I wonder where the journalistic integrity has gone. Sometimes I hope it's still there. I know that Mark Lett, who is the executive news editor and vice president over the state, is retiring, and I hate that because he is one of the old-fashioned journalists, and that's not always been the case over there. You remember the publisher, not the current publisher, but the publisher before, was basically letting Steve Spurrier hire and fire people over there. I mean, you want to curry favor so much with the football coach? Who you want the beat writer to be there, Steve? Yeah, we'll make sure we send you one you like. And when you're the beat writer, and I was the beat writer at the state newspaper covering the Gamecocks for a number of years, it is by nature an adversarial relationship.
Yeah.
But you have to have respect for them, and if you do your job, they'll have respect for you. I can remember Brad Scott telling me one time when he was here, he was just shaking his head because the beat writer at that time at the state, he was telling me, he says, we try to feed him information and he doesn't use it. we got upset with one of our Clemson beat writers years ago. We told him, come on, you got to do a better job. So he called Bob Bradley, the folks at Clemson Sports Information, and said, hey, if y'all don't start helping me out, I'm going to get fired. Well, that's, help yourself out, develop some sources. That's one thing I like about Phil. Phil's been around long enough that he has plenty of sources, and but it's just, and maybe fans don't care. Maybe fans don't care about what we're talking about, but boy, things have changed.
Well, the one thing you got to realize that you want, in this day and age, everybody wants to win. But that one little thing that people don't realize that still has to be there is you got to have patience. I don't have any patience. We need to win now. Well, you see what happened at Ole Miss. Right. See, when you don't have any patience, you cut corners. When you cut corners, you get caught. And then, everything just topples down. Now you got years of rebuilding what now you've torn down. And it really, the integrity of the university, at least the athletic program, goes down when that happens as well.
And there's so much money involved now, Tom. I mean, in the old days, if Frank Howard had a bad year, the AD would go pat him on the back and say, go get him next year. Now, if you have a couple bad years in a row, it's, we'll see you later. I mean, it's amazing.
There's the one thing I cannot realize about sports now is that, okay, who's better to know what the problems in the program that need cleaning up than the guy that's right there? Now, he may have to hire somebody that's from the outside to just look at it, give a look at it. But, I go back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Rooney family, how many coaches they've had in the last 40 years? Maybe about 2 or 3.
Not many.
And they've been a successful franchise because they may move in some people now and then, or assistant coach moves to a higher level, bring in a new guy, keep things fresh, but the CEO is still there.
That's one reason I was a little disappointed with South Carolina making the move on Chad Holbrook. And I understood the reason they did, but you've got a quality individual. He's never going to get you in any trouble with the NCAA. He's never going to do anything that reflects badly on the university. And this past year was just such it's just snake bit. And if it had not been for missing the tournament in 2015, they would have survived this past year. But the two together was just too much. So now even college baseball has gotten to the point. 5 years, not, it used to be, I got to have 5 years. And he did have 5, but how many coaches have been fired in less than 5? It's more like 3 years now. If you don't produce in 3 years, we're paying you so much money. If you don't produce in 3 years, we'll go find somebody else.
And it's almost like you're saying now, if you got to cheat, I don't want to know about it, but just get it done. And Chad's problem was he did get hired behind Ray Tanner. See, this the guy I want to be the coach that follows the coach that follows the legend. That's the way you do it.
When Sparky Woods was offered the job after Joe Morrison unexpectedly passed away, he told his wife, he said, you know what, we'd probably be better off not to take it and wait until the next guy finishes and then look at it. But of course, it was just too good of a situation, too much money to pass over. But you're right. The guy following that legend is very, very difficult to do. And if not for Chad Holbrook, South Carolina would not have had to. National championship.
Well, I'm thinking about it now, and in any sport, Teddy, the only guy that comes to the top of my head that follows somewhat of a legend is when, you had an assistant sitting over there next to Judd Heathcote at Michigan State, and that was the Magic Johnson years. Then a few years later, he had successful years, then left, and they boosted up the assistant, Tom Izzo, who turned out to be, had a better success than Judd Heathcote, but you don't see it often where a guy follows a legend and he takes off and more successful than the guy he had the shoes to fill.
Ray Tanner took over the NC State baseball program when he was 28 years old. You're just not going to see that anymore because even baseball, the money and the expectations have gotten so high.
Well, that guy at Oklahoma is only about 28. No, he's about 30.
Lincoln Riley, football. Was he 32?
I think he's 32 or something like that.
He's Ray Tanner talked to him about the football.
And people say, what are you talking to that baby for? Well, now you know why.
Yeah. All right. Good show. Appreciate everybody being with us. Thank you, Jared. Thank you, Tom. We'll be back with you tomorrow on Sports Talk.